let's first talk about your involvement and how you got involved with this project.
Sure. Well, Dana Nachman, who directed the film, is a good friend of mine from the film festival circuit. Actually, when Dear Zachary, my previous documentary, got picked up by MSNBC, we shared the same sales rep, and he actually sold her first documentary to MSNBC like 3 months after that. And when I was having dinner with him in New York the weekend Dear Zachary opened in theaters there, he said, "Oh, I actually just sold this filmmaker's movie, and she's actually lives in your hometown." Because I'm from San Jose, the Bay Area, and that's where she is living now. And so I was like, oh, cool. So I met her next time I was home, and we just kept hanging out and bumping into each other on the film festival circuit for years now. And at another film festival, her previous 3 films she co-directed, and at another film festival a few years ago, I moderated a panel like on her and her partner's work. And so we were just friends, never thought of working together. And she calls me up in July. And was like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. I've been working on this documentary for I've been shooting it, and we need to start cutting, and I had 2 different editors who were gonna do it, had to flake out on me, and I promised my lead investor it'll be done in 3 months, and no one's done anything. Is there any way that I could hire you to edit it, because I really like your work. I don't know if you ever edit for other directors, and I never had before. But I said, well, what's the movie about? And she said, Batkid. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that story from the thing. And I said, give me 24 hours to think about it. Let me take a look. And I read up on it and thought, you know what, this would be something cool to be involved with. I wasn't sure, it was like, okay, cool. And at the time, I needed a job, so I was like, hey, good. And then when I got all the footage and I sat down and watched everything, my first reaction was, I thought 2 things. I thought, one, this is a Frank Capra movie. This is It's a Wonderful Life with real people. And pretty much everything I've ever done is kind of a riff on It's a Wonderful Life in some way. And number 2, it's a buddy movie. Because I thought, okay, we meet Miles, then we meet EJ, track them separately for the first part of the movie. They meet the night before in this magical kind of circus center thing, and then they go on this adventure together. And the whole movie thereafter is a journey to, in my mind, a journey to the line, it's like I have a new little brother. It's that. And it's the creation of this family and everything. Because I know, so that was my interest in it, and that's how I came aboard. So yeah.
Certainly, we were watching the credits. You were remarking that you have a lot of jobs. So did that all come from you being an editor, or was that other caps you were brought on to wear?
Well, here's what happened. Dana had a script written, and she sent it to me. And I read it, and I said, before I got the footage, I read through it, and I said, okay, I get the basic gist of what she wants to do here. And the basic structure she had is still the same. And then I said, okay, I'm not just going to cut together what you have. I want to watch everything, because I don't know if anyone has watched every frame of everything that was shot, including on the day of and everything. And so just because I'm probably going to see things that you might not, or that sort of thing. And she said, okay, sure. So it freaked her out a little bit, because I spent 3 weeks doing that of the 3 months we had. but then I started putting it together and kind of reworking. As I sort of threw the salad up in the air, if you will, and put it together my own way, I said, I'm gonna do something different a bit. If you hate it, I'll put it back the way you had it, but I'd like to at least try what I want to do. And she said, sure. And fortunately for me, she liked everything I did, so we basically left it as is. So that's how, at the end, we said, we sort of talked about it and said, it's appropriate to say with the reworkings I did that I co-wrote this with you, I guess, right? And she said, oh yeah, and so that's how we ended up with that. And then when she saw the way it was cut, she's like, I don't understand, when you cut to here and here, how's that gonna go? And I said, oh, there's gonna be sound effects like this. And she said, you kind of need to do the sound design for this too, don't you? I said, I'd kind of like to. I'd like to, protect, the images, what I did. So then I did that, and then I ended up, because most of the music in the film is pre-licensed from, other sources. So that, the movie can feel like a Frankenstein's monster if the music isn't sculpted properly, and start a certain piece here and then bring it back over here. Because I score all my own movies, I'm not used to bringing in music from the outside. So I was trying to kind of, as the music editor, kind of be the arbiter of where, how to make it feel not like some stitched together thing, but like it was cohesive. And then to plug some holes, we used a few minutes of my own music, and then I went on a couple of shoots we did. So I basically was jack of all trades to do whatever needed to be done to finish the film in time.
You had cinematography credit, you had sound editing, music editor, you had score.
Yeah, I went along on a couple days, or a day or two of shooting. Like when we went to Industrial Light and Magic to shoot Mike the Penguin at work, that was so cool. I'm like, I'm so excited E.T. gets to be in this movie, because that's my favorite film. And so like I shot with him there. I shot with Jen and Teresa at Make-A-Wish in the office, like the B-roll of them in the office, and that was me, and stuff like that. I just was, you know, kind of helping out and whatever we needed to get. I mean, we were kind of overkill that day because she had hired 2 cameramen, and then I had like a B camera, but I kept sort of like doing weird stuff, and so yeah.
How much of the footage was provided to you by the Make-A-Wish people? All the stuff that they filmed on that day and everything.
Yeah.
What was the percentage of footage that was that they were just gave you all of that and then you just sort of filled in the blanks with some?
Well, here's actually to answer that. I'll tell you how Dana came to the project, because she came to it after the Batkid day happened, because she didn't know about it the day it was happening, and she was on a phone.
So she was the only one.
Yeah, she was the only one. She said she was the only one who didn't know, and she was on a phone call with like 3, she said, middle-aged men the next day who were all like practically in tears about this thing that happened the day before. She's like, what is this thing that they're talking about? Like, if it affects them this much, this has got to be something kind of big. And so she went and found out about it. She ended up getting a meeting with Patricia, the head of Make-A-Wish, to talk about doing a documentary, and Patricia liked her and said yes. And originally she was thinking of just like trying to find YouTube crowd videos to try to source the whole thing together, and then Make-A-Wish said, oh, we actually hired a 5-person camera crew to shoot the day to put together this little 10-minute PSA that they had, you know, about the thing. So they had hours and hours of footage with, you know, a microphone on the adult Batman and on the, you know, and so she licensed that stuff. The company that shot it like had that footage, so she made an arrangement with them to get all the footage from that. And then also Comcast as well too had a camera on the ground that day, the whole day. They were sort of working with Make-A-Wish on it, and we got all their footage as well. And then Nick and Natalie, the parents, had their own home camera there. It's amazing. They had never owned a video camera in their lives, you know, before that weekend. It was like, the shooting was really good. Like, you know, for a guy who'd never held a video camera before, I'm like, this framing's good. It's like, man, some of this stuff's better than the professional stuff I'm looking at here. Basically, you know, the second half of the movie, all that stuff, that's stuff that, you know, existed, thank God, from Comcast and John Craden Films, who Make-A-Wish hired to shoot it. Although I don't, like I said, I don't know that anyone had actually gone through it before and listened, because when you shut off all the other microphone channels and just had the adult Batmans, there was this like gold of like the, you know, stuff between him and the little boy that, you know, when you first watch it with all the pots open, you can't tell it's there. You know, you're just sort of getting a sense of what's there, and you know, solo that channel, I'm like, oh my God, this is like adorable. Like the little exchanges they're having. So that helped me out with my buddy movie thing a lot. So.
When it comes to assembling this footage and kind of creating the narrative, how did you want to kind of respect audience's emotions and also be able to get them going, but also not kind of push them too far? Or when you're working with these true events, this true assembly, did it kind of tell itself in a way to you?
You know, particularly for the second half of the movie, I just sort of, you know, let the footage tell me what it wanted to be, yeah. I guess. My whole thing was, I remember Dana's always said one of the reasons she was interested in this was that when she went to speak to Patricia and said, how many people did you want to show up? And Patricia said 200. That's when she's like, whoa, there's a story here because 25,000 showed up, what's the story? And I think personally for me, that's interesting, but what I personally felt and what I hope I brought to the movie is that I don't know that audiences are that excited about movies about issues, but they go see movies about people. And for me, I really wanted to make this the story about like all these disparate people who came together to become this sort of extended family. And so it was really important to try to paint each person as we met them, and you know, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think as far as like the sentimentality aspect of it, I think what happened was so emotional you can just kind of let it be there. Yeah. I think, actually, this is probably good that. I have a tendency, I love like in movie scores like John Williams and things like that are very like, you know, emotional and, you know, lush. And Dana and I have totally different like tastes in film music. And I think maybe actually that was good for this film, because sometimes I would say, what about this? And I'd put something under the picture and she'd say, oh God, that's sappy. And I'm like, okay. and she would put something else in, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. It's not what I would have done, but yeah, that works. So I think it was kind of a nice push-pull, because I was oftentimes pushing for the more emotional thing, and she was like, oh geez, that's so much. No. And I would be like, okay. So there was kind of, I think that was good, because I think actually she was a really good steadying hand in that regard to keep me from going overboard with some of the musical choices that I probably would have leaned toward. So that may have addressed a lot of what you're talking about.
to follow up what Nick was sort of getting at there, what I like so much about both of the docs that you've been involved with now is that you deal with subject matter that clearly is very easy to get an emotional get to the emotional core of a human being. But the thing about both of these movies that I find kind of thematically interesting is that while you have one film that's, two films that deal with a tragedy in some respect, but both films are ultimately about bringing something back to life in a way. And in Miles' case, his childhood with Dear Zachary, the memory of your friend and everything that he stood for and what the Bagbies stood for. So, if you would maybe talk about the parallels that maybe you were thinking about Dear Zachary while you were assembling this thing together.
It's funny, because you wrote that wonderful piece about Slamdance, which you wrote about this. Actually, when you wrote about it, was the first time I really thought of the parallels. I was reading it, I was like, oh, wow, I hadn't really thought about that. I was just honestly trying to, make the best movie I could out of the footage, and like I said, leaning with my Capra-esque, tendencies to try to bring out that, because I guess what really struck me also too, and actually this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently, particularly with what's in the news all the time now, is I thought, we are living currently in a time where the worst elements of law enforcement are getting the most press, and they're certainly, not, certainly not good people that have been, we've been hearing about. But there are a lot of wonderful people in law enforcement too, and they don't get the press. And I kind of love that this is like a portrait of a community working in harmony with its police department in a positive way. That maybe can remind people, yes, there are bad people out there, but there are good ones too. So please don't hate everybody. So I kind of like that aspect, because I've met those people and they're lovely, just as you see them in the film. And I think one of the things that really struck me also too was when the police chief said in his interview, like, every time we would say to the crowd, hey, would you just give a little guy a run? People were like, oh, okay, helping out. And he's like, wow, you never see that. Like, human beings are clearly capable of functioning like that with each other. Why don't we do that? I thought that was a really interesting question. Or when Teresa from Make-A-Wish says, like, about the crowd that gathered at Civic Center, or City Hall, this is the first time that we'd seen that many people have been crowded in that place, and people were actually nice to each other. Leaving the police out of it, just like people to each other. And like, well, why aren't people like that? I mean, because I guess everybody understood why they were there that day. They were there for this little boy. And I think, is that the key, that because we don't know each other's motivations or whatever, that we often assume the worst or whatever, and people are just, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I don't have any answers, but it was fascinating to me. I thought, this is actually really profound, and I don't understand if we're capable of this. Why don't we do this more? What is it that we're wired to automatically think the worst of people?
I kept thinking, and I'm wondering if you, as you're going through the footage, thought there are some people here that might be forgetting that this is about one kid. It's not about the city looking good. It's not about Make-A-Wish looking good. It's not about the police looking good. And did you also have to remind yourself and make that your mantra, that we have to make this about this kid? I mean, it's a great story overall about a city coming together, and the world coming together really for this kid. But it wasn't supposed to be about this kid, and you have to keep telling yourself, let's remember, let's keep coming back to him.
Well, the interesting thing that has been brought up many times is who had more fun that day, Miles or the people putting it on? And that's why I think, as much as it is, the day was done for Miles and certainly was to his specifications, I think that the movie actually is about everybody else, because it is about like what it evoked in all these people who participated. And so, I mean, that's why I said I wanted to keep it centered. While cutting, I was always trying to keep it centered on Miles and EJ that day, and the whole the people that we get to know in the first half of the film. So we anchor into that. But for me, it kind of was about the sense of play that it re-evoked in adults, and the fact that we kind of are trained to not do that when we get older, and how when that's rediscovered, there's a very joyful thing that happens. So. I try to kind of, my personal thing when cutting it was to try to balance it a little bit. So, yeah.
We got a question here.
Hello, please. I'm curious, Batman isn't just a superhero, he's a character icon worldwide, but he's also a property. So could you talk about, like, the movie didn't really cover it, but could you talk about how Warner Brothers / DC responded or contributed, or if they didn't, why, or just speak to that.
I don't know about conversations that happened between Warner Brothers and Make-A-Wish, because I think honestly what happened is they thought it was going to be 200 people. So it's like when you put on a little event with 200 people or whatever, you don't. It's not, intellectual property isn't like a big thing that you think about, particularly if it's for a little boy's wish. When it became huge, I know there were conversations that took place, but the becoming huge, as you saw, was an accident. It was just like something that happened in a couple of weeks, and they went, "Oh my God, what's going on?" So we, in cutting the movie, were kind of, one of the operating things was, you have to show what happened, and this is fair use because it's, this is what happened that day, and this is, a document thereof. But don't linger on the logos and things longer than you have to and that sort of thing. Because no, seriously, we went over that with the lawyer very carefully. Like, what is cool, what is not cool, we want to be, because this is a real thing that happened and we're documenting that real thing, but we didn't want to get Warner Brothers angry with us, and it turns out they ended up buying the movie. So it's all good now. So I'm like, oh, I didn't have to do that. Then I could have left it on screen longer. But
Beneficial for everybody.
Yeah. So now it's cool, and it's lovely that this is part of the Batman family there now, and I think that's amazing. Like people said that to us when we were working on, like, Warner Brothers should pick this up, and we were like, this is never going to happen. And then between our first and second screenings at Slam Dance in January, it's like they're really interested. Like, are you serious? So,
and to kind of follow up on that, was the title of the film always going to be Batkid Begins, or were you toying with it, or did you have any play in that or say in that?
That title was decided upon literally like the week I was hired in July. Because what she just told me was, at the time, it was untitled Batkid documentary, and then she was playing around with it and came up with that, and I was like, oh yeah, that's great. And so yeah, no, that was all Dana. She came up with that, and I was like, oh, that's great.
Cool.
So,
Thank
you. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks.
In the film, when you're interviewing Miles, or when Miles' parents are being interviewed, they talk about the idea of this entire experience sort of going to Miles' head at some point. And I wonder, you think about everything that a child sort of absorbs, from the moment they're born, and it's amazing what they can remember from such a young age. And now you have Miles at this period where so much has already happened to him, and you wonder if that, maybe 5-10 years down the road, that he'll be able to look at this film and maybe then pay it forward in his own way to someone else, maybe be involved with Make-A-Wish, or just be just someone he knows and lend a helping hand in that way, just based on this experience.
It's very possible. The interesting thing is, Miles' parents said, from while we were still editing, to Dana, and then after they saw the movie too, we love the film. We're not coming to any film festivals to parade him out, because we don't want him to. Yeah. We want him to. This was an accident. This was not supposed to happen. We're people in farm country. We just want to have a normal life. And he's he's in remission. He's doing great. He just lost his first tooth in February, I believe, and he's he's in first grade, 6 years old. So so that was their whole thing, is we're not coming to any festivals, whatnot. But we wish you guys the best, and we want to do anything we can to help Make-A-Wish. But we don't want this to keep going, and have him be something that's going to mess with his head. Though it's interesting, I didn't go to the Ashland Film Festival in Oregon, but Dana did. And Dana she was actually the perfect person to shoot this movie, because she's a mother of 3 children. She and Natalie relate to each other really well. And actually, that's Dana's son Charlie, who is in all the shots playing with Miles on the floor. They're buddies now with play dates and things. So it was funny when Miles and his family decided to go to the Ashland Film Festival with them. They just went in the audience and sat there. They didn't tell anybody that they were there. And so it was funny, Dana posted on Facebook right before, it was we have the cutest entourage, and it was her kids, the producer Lisa's kids, and then Miles and his brother Clayton, just anonymous kids like anybody else going to see this movie. And so they were there in the audience, and they had a great time, but nobody knew. so that was cool. Yeah, it's interesting. Miles has seen the movie, I think, 4 times now and loves it. But originally Dana was saying, and she talked to Natalie about it, do you think he should see this? Because to him, this really happened. And will this spoil the magic? It was all constructed. But and Natalie apparently originally said, yeah, let me think about that. But then showed him the movie, and he watched it for the first time on a Friday night at home. And then he said to his mom, can I see it again the next day? And then he'll watch it Saturday and Sunday. And so he loves the movie, but I think it's still, it's still at that age where it still seems real to him. And one thing Dana's said many times, which I think is true, which is, at his age when this happened, to a 5-year-old, 200 people looks about the same as 25,000. Like, I don't know that he was able to process how big it was, and because at 5 years old, you're not on the internet, you're not, reading articles or, tweeting or whatever. I think to him it was just like, hey, this really cool day, and people were really nice, and he got to be Batman, and now he's back to his life, and oh, hey, they made this movie about it, cool, and he can go watch it. But I think his parents are doing a wonderful job of like minimizing his exposure to this whole thing.
Absolutely.
So,
We do need to wrap this up, but I wanted to thank everyone for coming out
Thank
on a
you.
Rainy Chicago night to see this wonderful movie.
thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we have a 10 o'clock movie called The Keeping Room if you want to stick around for that. Otherwise, we have all the films for the rest of the week. Please come out and check those out. Another big round of applause for Kurt Kenny.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.